Space Force is trying to be super initiative, brand new kid on the block. And essentially the program I work for is called the Holistic Health Approach, which is Space Force's version of embedded care, but it looks different and it is very innovative. And I'm grateful to be a part of it. But essentially we're taking different aspects of other embedded cares that we already know are out there that have trialed and errored and worked. And Space Force was very intentional to bring together SMEs from all branches of military and life who already had trial and error experience. They were very smart. So, the 9 of us sit down at the table and it's like, I've already done that. Like, let's try this. Or, I've already done that. So we've been able to hit the ground running, I feel like, a little bit faster than some of these other programs just because of the intention that they did into their building. But essentially, we take different forms of human performance optimization, lifestyle preventative medicine, a little bit of public health, and then your traditional embedded care. We roll it all into one program.
You're listening to PT Pintcast, the show where we explore the intersections of health, human performance, and the unexpected journeys that professionals take in their careers. Today, we're diving into the world of U.S. Space Force. Yeah, it's real, and it's here. Our guest, Sarah Ward, has taken a fascinating journey from physical therapy in special warfare to her current role as a holistic health integrator with Space Force. We'll hear how she combines tactical human performance, preventative care, and cutting-edge innovation in one of the most unique environments on Earth, or not on Earth. Stay tuned as we boldly go where few clinicians have gone before. Come on, you knew I was going to make a space joke, right? Don't move. This is PT Pintcast. So, full disclosure to dreams, one of my, if not my favorite movies when I was a kid was Space Camp.
Oh, was it?
If you grew up and you were my age, I'm 44, so I was born in 79, 80. Space Camp was the thing.
It was.
And here's why. It's such a well-written story because anybody could accidentally go to space. So you were always just first of all, best advertisement for Space Camp it could ever be, because look at the things that you could do. Right. So spoiler alert, but I don't think I have to say spoiler alert, because if the movie's over 10 years old, I don't have to say spoiler alert. It means you just haven't seen it. Kids go to Space Camp. Some of the kids don't want to be there, but they have to be there. Some of the kids love space, and then they actually accidentally get launched into space, and they have to work together as a team to somehow get home. And it's a perfect kid movie, but it showed kids I don't know, maybe it could happen. So you sort of are, living part of that a little bit, where you got to take what you do and touch space in somehow. So before, I don't want to explain to people what you do. I want you to explain to people what you do. Sarah Ward, how are you a physical therapist?
Yeah. So I loved Space Camp. I know exactly what you're talking about. So I'm an early 80s baby. But yeah, so I've had a very eclectic physical therapy career journey. I've been a practitioner for 14 going on 15 years actually. And dipped into tactical when I was about 9 years in. I got recruited for a special warfare unit, and that's, although it doesn't sound applicable, it's actually how I landed up here. So I do find it to be appropriate, but essentially worked with Air Force special warfare for 5 years and was embedded in a unit and did tons of cool stuff and went out in the field and did a lot of emergency medicine and learned a lot. It was amazing. I always joke around and say, as a clinical provider, a treating provider, that was the peak of my career by all means. It was such a good family environment. Had some opportunities to present on the military aspect level at some pretty high levels, pretty high level conferences, and came into, if Space Force is actually part of the Air Force. So the Air Force made a division called Space Force. We're 4 years old. And that's how I got recruited. So I was kind of already in the Air Force space and in the human performance world, embedded on a team, helping build out programming on the special warfare side, which has been around a while, but they were trying to build out different tiers of special warfare. And that's kind of how I landed over here. Actually, I'm very grateful for my experience over there, because that's how these jobs essentially got filled by word of mouth in the beginning for the first handful of quote unquote OGs that are on the ground building the program. But got recruited over, and it turned into a job that I couldn't refuse. I always said I would only leave my special warfare job if I either A, got like a tier one, like a Delta Force level job, or a space job. Those were always my two, like, that's the
Yeah.
only way I'm leaving scenarios. So I got the space
All
job.
right. Yeah.
um,
So
yeah.
so
And,
what does
and
that look like? What is You keep calling it the space job. So you work
this,
technically as a holistic health integrator, right? That's like your
yes.
title for the US Space Force, which sounds
Mhm.
incredibly unique, and it is. What does that role involve? And what's like maybe your day-to-day, although I'm imagining day-to-day things change, but what does it look like in such a specialized environment?
Yeah, so it's really cool and unique, which was one of the really marketing sticking points for me. Because, like I said, I was very content where I was, so it had to be a very good, initiative to kind of pull me from the work I was doing. And they are. So Space Force is trying to be super initiative, brand new kid on the block. And essentially, the program I work for is called the Holistic Health Approach, which is Space Force's version of embedded care, but it looks different and it is very innovative. And I'm grateful to be a part of it. But essentially, we're taking different aspects of other embedded cares that we already know are out there that have trialed and errored and worked. And Space Force was very intentional to bring together SMEs from all branches of military and life who already had trial and error experience. They were very smart. So, the nine of us sit down at the table and it's like, I've already done that. Like, let's try this. Or, I've already done that. So we've been able to hit the
Mhm.
ground running, I feel like, a little bit faster than some of these other programs just because of the intention that they did into their building. But essentially, we take different forms of human performance optimization, lifestyle preventative medicine, a little bit of public health, and then your traditional like embedded care. And we roll it all into one program. And what makes us different is the true focus on preventative care. So if you come on board our team, initiative that Space Force is doing is all of our providers become board certified in lifestyle medicine, which is really cool. And it's a huge
Yeah.
initiative with them. But the biggest thing is we take the care and we actually bring it into the restricted areas where there's never been care before. So a lot of times this type of clientele, they're in restricted areas for very long periods of time, 10, 12, sometimes longer shift. And they're just not taking care of themselves. And that's very common in the military and restricted area. It's kind of like once you go behind the locked door, we won't see you again. And then we're the first initiative to kind of go forward and bring the care into them versus trying to drag them out, which has always been kind of the status quo before then. And of course, people don't do it. They can't leave their post. They're doing a
Right.
very high level of work. So
Well, that's good. You're boldly going where no clinician has gone before. You knew I was going to make some space jokes, and you knew they'd be
yeah,
a little bit off topic. But of course, I got to do that. So in your
yeah,
work, in your career, and in the things that you've said, you've emphasized the importance of tactical human performance in your work. What makes working at Space Force different from other settings that even you've been in, or the traditional PT setting? And why is it so crucial to the mission?
yeah. So it's super different from civilian. I've worked in a lot of settings, a
Totally.
lot of sports orthopedics, the whole thing. I did PRN weekends at a trauma one center for years. I was a college professor for years, and just it doesn't really compare to any of that. And I think anybody that works as a therapist and tactical can resonate with that. It's just a totally different level field. You don't worry about insurance, like you have access to the
Right.
people, the leadership will make time for them to see you, compliance is a little different. So luckily, that's still the same in Space Force. If anything, it's better. The leadership is very passionate about being proactive and having health and wellness of the team for the mission, which is great. But the biggest thing, and I almost like to compare it to when I was with Special Warfare, because what they do is it's so nichey. It is very specialized. There's only a small amount of people that do it. But when I was with the special operators, they were physical performers, right? That's what you think of when you hear special operator. Big physical performers, exercising. Ooh, did I just cut out there?
Yeah, but you're back now.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Um,
Can you hear me? There you go.
and the difference jumping over here is they're cognitive high performers. So it's just a totally different
Sure.
way in terms of how you program and approach them. Very highly educated individuals, so your whole approach to kind of buy-in and educating them is completely different compared to any other type of population we worked with. that you'll sit down and they've already done the research on the topic that you're trying to brief them on, and they already have, questions with sources cited and all this stuff. So it's a much different level and more intense type of education and being able to care for them. But it's definitely the cognitive high performance that's probably the biggest indicator from this group compared to any other group, whether it be civilian or tactical.
Well, being educated, yeah, being educated in lifestyle medicine, obviously that's a very holistic approach, right? Looking at like all the different tenets. And we did an episode on lifestyle medicine and where it will be in 5 to 10 years. It's going to be there. So you're where the puck is already headed to, but it's not there yet. So in terms of innovative approaches, what are some things that you can talk about in terms of innovation? I mean, you're around other people that have, as you mentioned, been there, done that, understand what worked and what didn't. What are some cool innovations in just the short time you've been at Space Force you've been able to see or be a part of?
Yeah, yeah. There's a few. There are some legal restrictions on some of the things, so I can only scratch the surface. But the lifestyle medicine board certification is actually huge. There's not any other type of embedded care program in the military that either follows that and or requires that. So that was a huge win from Space Force, and they turned that over really quick. Essentially, they got the money and got the approval in about a year, which is very fast in government time. So just kind of the standardization of the program through that is really good, kind of aligning with that preventative medicine. And then the biggest thing preventative wise that we're doing is there's a wearable study. So they're actually doing a wearable study to try to
Oh,
figure out if wearing a wearable and maintaining standards of fitness set by, American Heart and things of that sort, very known, scientifically backed statuses of movement for general health, if that is better than taking a PT test in the military. Because again, we were having these really smart people that we recruited or Space Force recruited for being intelligent, right? I don't want to say we don't care what they look like physically, but we do. We want them healthy, but
right,
they recruited them for
right.
their brain and their skill set and their knowledge. And their PT test would come up once a year and they'd get hurt. And then they're out of work for 2-3 months because they got hurt because of a PT test, which has nothing to do with their job. So that's a big like innovative front that they're doing, which has been really exciting. So it's still undergoing. It's an active human subjects research study. So we still actually have another year in that, and then there should be some publication and stuff to follow.
Here's a question for you. Do you want to boost your clinic revenue by $290 per patient per quarter? Of course you do. That's rhetorical. Physiotech's remote therapeutic monitoring can help you do that, enhance patient outcomes, ease provider workload, and turbocharge your earnings. Kickstart with RTM at physiotech.ca. That's physiotech.ca. And the thing you interact with the most at your clinic, if you're a therapist, like it or not, is your EMR. MW Therapy's all-in-one outpatient PT EMR gives you seamless integration of patient portals, marketing automations, and billing, all at one unbelievable value. Switching over is a breeze too. Kick the tires, take a test drive at mwtherapy.com. And where is your PT career going? It's not rhetorical, it's literal. Embark on extraordinary patient care adventures with Jackson Therapy Partners. Visit them at jacksontherapy.com. This is perfect for physical therapists eager to make their mark, to do what you want to do, where you want to do it. Discover where your career can take you at jacksontherapy.com.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought of that. Where you're really you're in a military setting, right? You mentioned Space Force, part of the Air Force, and these people are being recruited because of their cognitive abilities. But even over the last 10 or 15 years, we've looked at even chess players. That's like the first thing that comes to mind. And I think I read, and I'll get the statistic wrong, but they've measured how many calories a chess player will burn during a match. But the person's just
Mm-hmm.
sitting there. Why would they be burning calories? Well, the computer inside their skull is actually a really a calorie hungry device. So what are some of the things that maybe are like obvious deficiencies? Is it, you mentioned wearables, is it the amount that they're moving, or this is something they haven't done before, so now you've got to encourage or lay the plan forward for those particular performers?
Yep, yep, and it lays about that. We really focus on the amount of movement within a given time period, and we're actually trying to, work with other branches of the government, like NASA, to figure out like what's an acceptable VO2 max, right? Like, we've had conversations like, what's a VO2 max? You'll send someone up in a spaceship. We could probably compare that to a VO2 max for like a Space Force person. So There's a lot of moving factors, but we're getting a lot of data, hoping. I don't think, takes years to kind of figure out the right answer, but we're definitely being innovative and staying on the right track, which was really exciting.
All right. So Space Force, even though it's in its infancy and there was a TV show sort of talking about it, it's real. You're proving
Right.
that. You're embedded there. What's one thing you'd want the audience of clinicians to know about work in the Space Force and the work that you're doing and why they should care about the role of PT in that particular setting? Someone watching this right now, this is their version of Space Camp, right? They're watching this, they're listening to Sarah, and they're saying, hey, in a couple of years, I could be doing that.
Yeah, yeah, and you could. Our program's growing. Yeah, I mean, aside from the point I made earlier that, it's just such a unique population cognitively. So if any type of like cognitive performance or cognitive rehab or even like neuro rehab, I tend to use a lot of my old neuro rehab back like foundation for a lot of the programming we do with these guys. I find myself kind of going back to that. If any of that excites you, pay attention to us because you would probably love this population that we're working with. But in terms of like what they do, I wish, and I feel like this is almost a cliche answer, I wish they could talk about more of what they do. Um,
Oh,
unfortunately, slash, fortunately, the majority of what the Space Force does is highly classified, and they really can't talk about it. The easiest way I can put it is they are really good air traffic controllers, but for space. If you kind of think of it like that, and there's a lot going on, and they're paying attention from the orbit all the way to the moon, so it's a lot of space that they're covering.
wow.
But in addition, there's still rapid response units and special niches, and there's just so much that they do that is of critical importance. That when they're called on to do their job, it's always very quick, very timely, but there's a very heavy, you need to do this or there'll be big consequences. So they're just super,
Yeah.
super, super important. I don't think I can stress that enough. And of course, I had no idea until I came over to and started working with them and, getting cleared and getting kind of read in on the missions. And it's like, oh my gosh, you guys are like super important. So I guess if you're interested in kind of like secret squirrel work that, may or may not have to do with outer space in terms of, and with really big, high cognitive performers, we would be the population for you.
Oh, balance has to come into play, right? So, in addition to your work with Space Force, word on the street is, or I should say, word on stage is, you do some stand up comedy as a hobby. How do you balance such an intense, important career with something as different as comedy? And was it intentional? Like, did you go into it saying like, hey, if I'm super focused at work, I need to do something that's a little bit fun and improvisational? How'd that come about?
Yeah. No, that's funny that you asked that. So I have had this could totally be a whole nother episode, but I have lived a very colorful life,
Yeah.
both as a therapist and outside of being a physical therapist. So I have been told on and off my entire life that should go into stand-up comedy or be a comedian. For me, it's a good way to like process stuff, I guess I can say, whether it be about work life or, things you're experiencing or even things you see. Like I'll write jokes sometimes of just like people watching, just to kind of process things in
Yeah.
the world. So for me, it's always been a good way to kind of process. I like to laugh stuff off. If there's a mental health therapist listening right now, they probably don't like what I'm saying, but that's just what's worked for me in terms of things. And honestly, moving down here to take this job actually gave me the opportunity a lot more because I was in a pretty rural area in New York with my special operations unit. And then down here in the nation's capital, there's obviously a lot more opportunities for stand up and open mics and things of that sort. So it's been a nice outlet for me. People love the medical physical therapy jokes, to be honest with you. There's usually a good balance between that and personal life. But I enjoy it. I see it more as an outlet and like a hobby. I actually made money for the
Yeah.
first time this year. I made $40
Yeah.
doing like an opening set for first time
Money.
ever.
That's money. Money's money.
Um, yeah, yeah. So I was a proud moment for me. I'm like, oh man, that's the first time I'm ever actually getting paid for making people laugh, which is really funny. But no, it's just a hobby that I enjoy. But I do try to blend in, where appropriate, like the personal versus PT jokes, and they always go over really well. Anytime I'm like, I'm a PT in my real job, the hands start going up, asking all types of weird questions
Uh-huh.
that I can then poke fun at, which is nice. So
That's good. Yeah, there's an outfit, and I've been, it's one of those things where like I got to take this. There's a group, and I think they've moved to Zoom so they can sort of reach more people, but they do improvisation classes for healthcare providers with the idea of most of improvisation slightly, it's a type of comedy, right? So, just for people, stand up would be more prepared, and improv is very much prepared for for nothing. Yes, and being sort of the only rule, but this course like uses improv rules and and drills and games to help healthcare providers, because when you're interacting with a patient, I mean, tell me like the better place to find material, right? But then what are you going to do with that
Yeah.
material, right? That's when you got to prepare it and put it on stage. But it's a great way to learn, and everybody pays attention to, in my opinion, what improv artists or comedians will say. But I think that improv artists or comedians spend an infinite more time listening and watching, as you mentioned, than they do talking or performing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Nope. And that's where I
Yeah.
get a lot of my material. And it's a good patient interaction skill. I mean, how often have you had somebody that's, starting to shut down or this and that, and you crack a joke and all of a sudden they're like, okay, I'll talk to you.
Game
I mean, it's
changer.
the same thing in this setting.
Game
Sometimes it takes, cracking a joke at a presentation or a staff meeting to get people to kind of, warm up to the idea of being taken care of. So yeah, I
Yeah.
enjoy it. It's been a
There's a
good
couple
outlet. I'm excited
notable
to be a part of it.
There's a couple notable physical therapists who've become full-time comedians. Chris DiStefano is from Staten Island. He sort of blew up a little bit, would hang out with the guys from Impractical Jokers. He's gone full-time. Johnny LaQuasto, who I've had on this show
Yeah,
before,
I know Johnny.
he's done sets all over the world, and he does, UFC. Great, really funny guy.
Hmm.
So not to put you on the spot, but the last thing we do on the show is called The Parting Shot. What would you want to leave with the audience as we wrap up? Is there any idea or anything you want to put what's your closer for this episode, is a better way of saying it?
Yeah, yeah. So Space Force is real. That's probably always my big general statement, because there's still a lot of surprise even when people are like, "What do you do?" And I say Space Force, and they're like, "No, really, like, what do you do?" So just know
What do you
it's
do?
real, and it's out there, and if any of it excites, feel free to. I'm pretty open. I'm an open book. You can find me on LinkedIn or anything, and I'm always happy to field questions and this and that. But my take home is always, keep learning, keep growing. When an opportunity presents itself, like take the time to sit down and think and explore it, because there's many times that you'll get job opportunities and, all the excuses come up, not the right time, not the right this, not the right that. And I even did that at times before I took this job. So just always take the leap of faith, because next thing you know, you could be part of something great that's brand new and just all new experiences. So I'm always open to learning and growing, and you should be too. So
Yeah. Well, sometimes they say leap and the net shall appear, but I guess with Space Force, like leap and the shuttle will appear to bring me back to Earth. I don't know, something like that, some sort of parody of that.
yeah, leap and the gravity will drop and
Perfect.
you'll just float away. So
Eventually it'll work. Sarah Ward, U.S. Space Force. It's real. It's here. It's a thing. Appreciate you coming
mhm.
on and explaining just a little snapshot of what you get to do as a PT in that setting.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me on again. It was great. So look forward to the next time.
Perfect.